My name is Douglas Wilson. My friends have always called me Biff. I'm 44 years old, and for 15 years I had my sights set on the presidency at Universal Foods. Unfortunately, my rival got that position. And after he got it, he hired someone to take care of me.
He was 44. He's been with Universal for 15 years. You're currently paying him $65,000 plus an automobile and stock options and so forth. He's married, 3 children. Does he have a drinking problem?
No.
Or anything to an excess?
No.
Is he behaving within the company?
Yes.
How about his home life? Are there any problems at home?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Does he suspect anything?
I don't think he's aware of anything, but he's an intelligent human being. He knows it's going to be coming.
You're going to continue his benefits and income for up to 12 months if it's required?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about credit cards?
No. Take those away.
Okay, I'll look after that today. So you were both candidates for the presidency. You got the job, he didn't.
All right, I started here about 7.5 years after Biff started here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Biff is a university grad. I have an MBA. Okay, our styles are totally different. We've been vying for this job now for the last 5 years.
Okay.
I got the job.
And
He's unhappy.
how has he behaved over the last 6 months?
Terribly.
Okay.
Okay, it's made my life miserable.
Morning, Barbara.
Morning, Mr. Wilson. How was your weekend?
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Hit 90 for the first time this summer.
Super.
Okay, that's fine. Now, how do you feel about this situation?
Well, I haven't changed at all. He's going, and he's going today.
Morning, Don. Morning, Betty. Don't tell me you were late again this morning. That's good.
You can either talk to him about the personal problems associated with this, that you both competed for the same job, you got it, he didn't, and you don't work effectively as a team, and it's in his interest to move on. Or you can also tell him that in your judgment, his level of marketing expertise is just not sufficient for a company the size of Universal.
Terrific. Morning, Liz. My call come in from White Plains?
Not yet, but Mr. Morgan would like to see you right away.
Good, thanks.
Don't forget, you leave. You can go home as soon as you introduce him to me. I'll be in the next office. It's very important.
Good morning, Universal Foods. Mr. Wilson, one moment, please.
Morgan and I never got along, but he didn't go into that. He just said that my marketing ability had become a problem, and he felt my talents could be better used somewhere else. When I started to argue, he cut it short. He said the decision was final, and he asked that I be out of the building in an hour.
Mr. Wilson, your call from White Plains came through.
Trust me, Mr. Wilson, I know what I'm doing.
Eric Barton, the consultant hired to orchestrate the termination, met with Wilson moments after it took place, just as planned.
For security reasons and company policy, it will be appropriate for you to give to either me or Mr. Anderson down the hall, the Director of Personnel, your keys and any credit cards that you may have.
Want it now or later?
Well, it doesn't matter. If it's convenient for you, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you.
Right on.
Sorry to have to ask for them, but I might just suggest to you that it's very much in your interest to leave the company this afternoon in a very professional manner.
Come on, that's all right, it's all right. I know how to behave myself.
Okay, well, look, it's most important. It may not appear so right now, but later on I'd be happy to explain why. I have a lot of experience in these matters, and I've seen a number of people do things that could seriously jeopardize their job search activities.
It's all right, I understand. I was shaken, numb. I had a number of allies in the company. I suppose I could have turned to them, but there didn't seem to be much point. My secretary came in with some papers for me to check over. We'd been together a long time. And when I told her what had happened, she began to cry. I couldn't think of anything to say.
Flowers, ma'am? Flowers, ma'am? Flowers, sir?
Yeah, give me a nice single one.
A single one? Would you like this one here? It's in the bed.
It was so clinical I could hardly believe it. That bastard had me dismembered and out of that door in 10 minutes. And somebody called Eric Barton came in to see me. At first he offered to help me. Then he asked for my credit card and my keys. Whose side is he on?
Did you ask him?
No, I was so hot I could hardly speak.
Oh, Douglas.
Well, how the hell am I supposed to feel? I sweated blood for that company for 15 years. Now what do I do?
The company had wanted Wilson to leave the premises quietly and forget he ever worked for them. Their greatest fear was that he might choose to retaliate with a weapon like dismissal lawyer David Harris.
In order for a company to justify terminating someone in Biff's position, they must show cause in court, and cause must be very, very substantial, particularly with a fellow in Biff's situation where he's been with the company for 15 years, 44 years of age. The chances of the company winning in court is extremely remote. They'd have to show almost theft or severe corruption on his part. I think general incompetence, which they may assert, would be insufficient.
Determined to avoid a legal battle with Wilson, the company paid relocation counselor Eric Barton $10,000 to defuse the fired man.
The use of relocation counselors has really come into being in the last 4 or 5 years, and in my assessment, the use of their services, although certainly a valuable one, is not necessarily motivated by humane considerations. I think probably the first concern an employer has would be to avoid the likes of myself, in that a lawsuit is detrimental not only to their image to the public, but also to other employees in similar situation.
By giving Wilson relocation counseling, as well as 12 months severance pay, the company achieved a number of objectives. They maintained their nice guy image in the business community. They made a lawsuit far less likely, and they soothed their troubled conscience. For now they had the comfort of knowing that Wilson was in capable hands.
You had any phone calls from anybody?
You mean, sympathy calls?
Interested people.
I'm letting my answering service take care of those.
Okay. Did you sleep okay last night?
Not bad. Look, could we talk about the program?
I'd be happy to. Why don't we just come out here and I can show you around a little bit. Barry Willis works here. He was a vice president of marketing and went through a career change and has joined my staff.
Wilson had been shattered, and the program was designed to put him back together again.
All of our research is
During
here
his
in
first month of
reports.
unemployment, he would receive intensive care from psychotherapists and job search professionals.
Photocopy machine.
His talents, his temperament, his interests and achievements would all be codified. Then an assessment would be made. An assessment Wilson wouldn't like.
And here we have our reception area. You come in each day and check in. All your typing is done there, phone messages and so forth. Come on down here, Biff, and I can show you we have about 25 of these workstations, and there's a number of people with similar backgrounds to yourself. There's a chap who's president of a package goods company over here, the vice president of systems, there's a solicitor.
About 100 fired executives come in and out of there each day. They talk to each other. They flip through the want ads. They try to come up with enough courage to make a few phone calls. It feels like a hospital ward. Barton doesn't wear a white smock or carry a stethoscope, but I suppose he might as well. I was just as scared as anyone else.
Let's start our whole job search techniquing on a path that's different than everybody else out there in the market. And that's why they stay unemployed. It isn't because we're in a recession or that we're not hiring. Chrysler's still hiring, and they'll hire you, even if it's to manage the cost reduction program. So you send them a letter. I have managed cost reduction programs. You make up a new broadcast letter. Your research
Relocation counseling became an industry in 1968 when a New York ad man took everything he knew about marketing packaged goods and applied it to fired executives. Eric Barton knows marketing. He used to sell insurance. But he's also a born-again Christian who senses something spiritual in the kind of marketing he's doing now.
I got a letter from Brother Christas in Titigar, India, who runs a leprosy clinic there, with 13,000 leprosy patients working with him. And he says this: it's a thrilling experience to get fully involved in this field, to become instruments in the hands of the Lord to make these poor people human again. And he underlines human again. Hey, what's the difference between that and relocation counseling? Except that these people are socially outcasts in their field. They're kicked out of their families. They're kicked out of their homes. And their bodies are falling to bits. That's what he does. We do it without the bodies falling apart.
I began waking up in the middle of the night with a million rationalizations for what had happened running through my mind. My left arm would go numb, and my left side would seize up. Sometimes I'd have to hyperventilate.
How your heart's responding to the exercise, and then depending on how it's working out, we'll elevate the treadmill and increase the speed until we get into the desired level, making sure that there's no changes that occur.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, time's up. How'd you do?
Not badly.
Good.
Didn't quite finish.
Okay, well, this one's 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
There's your instruction booklet, and there's your answers. Okay?
2 weeks into the program, Wilson underwent 3.5 hours of extensive psychometric examination to see how well he stacked up against his managerial peers. He learned that he was inclined to be blunt and judgmental, and as a result, his managerial ability was only fair. On the plus side, ranked against other university-educated managers, Wilson was in the 80th percentile of intelligence, with solid sales skills and a highly competitive nature. In preparation for his campaign, Wilson's skills and past achievements were quantified and assembled. On the page, they looked impressive. Hundreds of unsuspecting company presidents were about to be wooed. A month into the program, Wilson was ready to begin selling what Eric Barton had assured him was the most exciting product he'd ever sold. To gain the full effect, he had a little repackaging done at his own expense. Wilson's last hurdle was a mock interview in which executive recruiter Mark Fortan auditioned him for his new managerial role.
Biff, what kind of job are you aiming at?
I'd like the same kind of job that I had at Universal Foods. Vice president, general manager of a multi-divisional company. maybe even president.
Okay, Eric, first of all, I think he's trying to come across as a cool cat, Mr. Cool. And initially, he's fumbling. He's not sure of himself. First comment there, what kind of job is he looking at? He wants the same kind of job like the job he's had at Universal Foods. I'm gonna pin him down. I want him to be more specific. Any companies in particular?
General Foods, General Mills, Standard Brands, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. What do you think it takes to be a president of a company like General Mills or General Foods?
I think you have to be able to motivate people. You have to be able to plan, and probably most important of all, you've got to be able to delegate responsibilities.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think you have to be results-oriented. You have to have an analytical mind. And
Could you be more specific?
Well, you have to be a problem solver with good people skills.
I wouldn't know a problem-solving president if I walked over him, so it doesn't mean anything to me.
He's got to explain that a lot better.
That's right, that's right.
I agree.
He needs to be specific. He needs to talk about the challenges of a president of 1980, president of a large multidivisional company. That's the company he's shooting for. And yet it's hollow. He's giving me cliches. You know, what's a problem-solving, results-oriented person? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He points, lack of eye contact. Have you been fired from Universal Foods?
Well, I wouldn't like to put it that way.
How would you put it? Were you fired or weren't you fired?
Well, I'd say that I was edged out.
What do you mean by edged out?
The guy who fired me, we were rivals for the presidency, and he had friends on the board of directors, and as far as I'm concerned, he turned them against me.
Capital sin. He's destroying the current president. It doesn't help him. And it's probably the most damaging part of the interview.
Mm-hmm. And the board.
And the board, of course. So he doesn't look good.
No.
He's getting upset, and he really is not in control of his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
If a company like Universal Foods didn't want you, what makes you think a company like General Foods does?
The perception that Biff has for himself and the level of entry that he should have is a little different than what I've got. And our assessment generally says that Biff has peaked. He's over his head, and he's got to track his action plan now away from the major packaged goods companies. And that he should be lowering his sights from $500 million companies to those somewhere between 50 and 200 million. And he should branch out of packaged goods and move over into consumer durables, white goods, and in industrial marketing.
I wasn't interested in being sent down to the minor leagues. I'd gone along with the program mainly because the company was paying for it, and because I thought it might be of some benefit to me. But I couldn't agree with their assessment. I'd been with a major company for a long time, and I felt that there were other people and other organizations out there who knew what I was capable of. I was determined to seek those people out on my own.
One of the things I've suggested to him is that he try it. Let's put our foot in the market. Let's go after some of the biggies, the #1 jobs in the packaged good companies, and then what I expect will happen is that over time, he will start to experience rejection. And all these people he's counting on him to help him in the market, the executive search people, his third-party referrals, his friends, and so forth, they're all going to give him polite meetings, be very sensitive, tell him they're going to recommend him to somebody else, but they're not going to hire him. And after a month, he'll begin to see that as we will begin to decrease the amount of time we spend on the major companies and shift it over into the smaller organizations where he belongs.
When I was at Universal, Search people called me off and on for years, with a number of attractive job opportunities. I wanted to let those people know I was now available.
Herm Smith recruits executive talent on a worldwide basis. Companies pay him big money for his ability to find them the very best. The best executives are not necessarily unemployed.
Sure, he's an achiever, he has a high expectation, and you can hear it. He comes on the phone, and he speaks to the secretary in a very sonorous voice, says, you know, I'm executive vice president or vice president of such and such, which he was a day or two before. And he's very demanding. I mean, the guy who has his job and who's very content is not demanding on the phone. He talks like an average businessman. This guy comes on like he was the chairman of the board of United States Steel, because he's lost most of his ego to everybody else, and he's at least going to have it with that secretary out there. So he eventually comes through, and he begins. But the truth is, unemployed is unemployed. Unemployed in a suit with no income is no different than unemployed in blue jeans, walking the streets of town, trying to come up with enough dough for a hamburger for lunch. I can do my job best by seeing that the appropriate executives are in the right posts. These people need help, they need counsel. They should know that no amount of charming of me or any of the members of my firm as an individual is going to open a stairway to some great new job for them.
Many of my friends and associates were in a position to hire me. I went to them looking for help, but I'd never had to ask anyone for that kind of thing before. I didn't know how.
Well, let's put it this way. Right now, I'm a free agent. That's why I came to see you.
Why don't we go into my office? Angie, tell Frank I'll be 10 minutes late.
Yes, I will, Mr. White.
How's the family?
Just fine, thank you.
Well, basically, Biff's answering ads in the paper, which is nonsense. Biff is calling on some of the large recruiting firms, all of whom don't want to see him, because they want fast trackers. They don't want guys who've been there, been banged out, and they know he doesn't have the level of marketing to go after the vice president of marketing of a major company. They know that. But the problem is they don't tell him that. Okay, all he gets is a rejection letter. He's using his third-party network, which really constitutes having a beer with the boys, and everybody's feeling kind of yucky about the whole situation now, and there isn't any hardcore facts going on and hard action going on.
I'd been earning $65,000 a year, plus perks. I never really intended to go into business. But my father was a stockbroker, and any other interests I had weren't exactly encouraged. Marriage made the alternative seem pretty far-fetched. So I drifted into marketing. I did well at Universal. Eventually, I felt as though I belonged there. But I was extremely upset when they fired me. The worst part was realizing that I couldn't start all over again. It was too late for me to do anything else with my life.
Please turn that music down. I said turn that music down! You know, when I say turn that music down, I mean it!
Why don't you just leave me alone?
I know of a number of senior executives, let's say between the ages of 40 and 50, where some of the alternatives that have gone through their minds would just scare the wits right out of you, okay? And that's one of the significant roles that we can play. Look, we have to give a lot of negative information back to people. But as we give the negative information, we're giving positive information. It's a jungle out there. It's a jungle out there if you want to win.
Wilson belonged to a downtown fitness club, but he was far more likely to be seen enjoying martini lunches there than panting alongside those club members who run 15 miles at dawn each day. Wilson didn't take the notion that business is a combat zone quite as seriously as they did. But now they represented the competition. They were employed, and they were determined to stay that way. Dr. Jim Pabst owns part of the club and treats many of its members for stress.
When you go into a boardroom situation and your chief executive officer has a brown belt, there's a lot of respect, and it reverts to the old authoritarian rule of business. Karate is the conscious recognition that you're going into combat, and it's refining your skills for your particular business day.
More than 1,000 high-powered executives work out regularly at the Cambridge Club, an exclusive men's fitness center located in the heart of Toronto's financial district. Dr. Jim Pabst describes a typical club member.
He's a good example of the businessman warrior. I mean, he's an exemplar of that system because he's always in combat. I can recall him saying that when I'm shaking hands with his competitor at a Rotary luncheon, I'm thinking quietly of how I can kill him. And even in his idiom, he uses, they're going to blow me out of the water, all the guns are blazing at me when they open this campaign. To me, he's an exemplar of that system.
You're not in the movies anymore. Okay?
Anytime a club member falters in the workplace, Jim Pabst is there to take care of him. Pabst specializes in the treatment of bleeding ulcers, blocked arteries, high blood pressure, and coronaries. In his words, these constitute the wounds of a businessman warrior, and he finds they're often inflicted by any substantial loss of power. To learn who the next casualty will be, Jim Pabst has only to read daily dispatches from the front.
I get as much information from the Financial Post newspaper as I do the New England Journal of Medicine. And the reason is that my practice is in the core of the city. The Post will report mergers, and whenever you know there's a merger, in any transaction, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. There's going to be a duplication of officers of a company. And I know that imminent demotion, firing, termination will take place.
Are we ready? Let's get out of here, you guys. Biff, you arsehole! Why weren't you down here? You missed karate and everything.
When Wilson failed in his bid for the presidency at Universal Foods, his blood pressure shot up and martini lunches became a thing of the past. When he lost his job 6 months later, Wilson entered an exercise program and was put on a strict diet. While he may have felt hard done by, compared with other unemployed executives over the age of 40, Wilson was traveling first class. Wilson had been given a generous settlement because he had enough clout in the business community to cause problems for his former employer. Without that clout, Wilson might have wound up in a club like 40 Plus.
My name is Stan Warshaw. I'm the president of the 40 Plus Club of New York. Our job here is to teach unemployed executives how to find a job. We do this by means of teaching the proper preparation of a resume. Also, we conduct a course in interview skills, which may include a mock interview. And we counsel with our members on marketing strategy. We also counsel them on an emotional basis if needed, because there are many problems associated with unemployment which may affect our members. For those unaccustomed to civilization, this is a coat rack. A hotline. It's a telephone reserved exclusively for incoming calls from employers. And the employers know about the number because this number appears on all the resumes that we prepare or help prepare for our members. These are ordinary public telephones which our members may use, payphones.
Unlike Biff Wilson, the unemployed executives here were simply discarded by their former employers. They're subsidized by nobody. They fund and staff the club themselves.
This is our marketing office. We have a series of telephones which are used by our marketing members to contact employers in order to solicit job opportunities from them. On the wall between the windows is an old brass ship's bell, which we ring whenever we have a member who finds a job. Gentlemen, don't jump. Yeah. We have here some old typewriters which still work, even though the people who manipulate them don't. We have here a treasurer's office who is busy treasuring. We have not too much money to take care of, but we try to keep track of it nevertheless. These gentlemen are members of our club. Some of them are writing resumes.
40 Plus was established more than 40 years ago to combat a widespread bias against hiring middle-aged executives. For Stanley Warshaw, things haven't changed. Stanley hasn't seen a paycheck in 2 years.
I have no better way to try than I'm doing now. If someone wants to educate me to a better way, I'm perfectly willing to listen and judge, but I keep trying, and I am active, and I'm working towards my goals, and I have responsibility, and I have authority, a reason to get up in the morning and a place to go, and things to do, and all of which are designed to contribute to my successful job search.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, there's two. They came in and came.
Going into the office every morning to pick up your messages and get on the phone made it seem like you were still working. But a lot of the time, all you did in a day was file your rejection letters. It got depressing. And you realized if you didn't find a job, it was going to stay that way.
Start a telephone training program. Set high standards for yourself. Can you imagine making 20 telephone calls a day to get a job? Well, I'm going to ask you to do it for 2 weeks. And every time you're in an interview, you're going to say, where do we go from here? How do we close the deal? When do I start working? I want the order. I got to ask for it. Okay? And you can do it. The first time you do it, it's hard. The second time, it's not so hard. Let's get to the third time, it's almost fun. Okay?
Companies only hire winners. So you know you have to present yourself that way. But the thing is, winners don't get fired. And so some days you think, well, maybe the company was right. Maybe I really am no good.
Let's face it, why do people get terminated, okay? And by far, nobody likes to talk about this, but the largest component why they do is personality conflict with their superiors. It's got nothing to do with the competence. The superior doesn't even want to generate the kind of style out of his subordinate to have an effective team. He just doesn't like them, okay? But nobody says, I'm firing you because I don't like you. That's not right in our society. But that, in effect, is what happens, okay?
The day after Morgan was named president, he called us all into the boardroom. We watched him lay out his charts and graphs and listened to him make some grand prophecies. He told us Universal was heading into an exciting new era. As we'd just come off our best year ever, I asked him what he thought had been wrong with the old era. He stopped short, turned around and said, Wilson, that's just the kind of question I'd expect from a guy like you.
Sure, he's been a threat. He was a threat to the other guy. He would threaten anybody, okay, because he doesn't know when to close off and to relate effectively in a peer group situation where he encourages people in their team play. Instead of that, he tries to impress through his ego and his dominance people below him, and he threatens the heck out of people above him. You know, presidents don't have to hire guys who threaten them.
Universal had sales of $25 million a year when I joined them, and $400 million when I left. A lot of that was my doing, and I felt I'd earned the right to criticize. I not only helped build the company, I cared about the company. And what's more, I cared about the people who worked there. Even now, when I read that something's gone wrong at Universal, I get mad as hell.
Company loyalty is about as progressive as moats and drawbridges in my book. Business is a contract entered into in enlightened self-interest by shareholders and employees. They're both stakeholders in something. But the corporation cannot be loyal. It is impossible for the corporation or the organization to be loyal because they can be wiped out tomorrow. A merger can go through the floor of the exchange, and the company's gone. And one of the great motherhood companies, IBM, chronicled this in 1965. So to delegate your career or your life to an organization, like they used to do in olden times, you pledged your allegiances or your fealty to the Lord, is probably a license to become as obsolete as, as a drawbridge.
Douglas, how can I study if you keep doing that?
When the kids were growing up, I tried to be there for them. Anytime I went away, I called, I wrote, I brought back presents. But when you're a little guy, I guess it's hard to understand that your father's got to do whatever the company wants him to do, or else he's out of a job.
Should we do the dishes?
I'm already done.
Oh.
As they got older, my wife went back to school, and everybody got used to not having me around. I don't know. I understand why business people stay single these days, but somehow it seems a little sad. You know, how do you deal with a family when you're in business? Well, just don't have one.
Dad?
I know you'll get out of here if you will just practice half of this, okay? Many of you are, and I know it's tough, and some of you have been here a long time, but we've got to keep going at it. Don't lose your confidence, whatever you do, because there's a lot of people out there that need you, okay? You just haven't found them yet, okay? And you got to believe that. You get discouraged. You get discouraged that you can't get a job. You just haven't organized the chemistry right. You haven't organized the paper flow right. You haven't organized your research right. And you've got to keep knocking on those doors, okay? Knock a little differently. Work harder. Be more disciplined. Have a plan. Use people. Use people like you've never used people before. And don't be afraid or ashamed to do it. You'll get a job. You'll get a super job. You'll get a better job. And when it's all over, you say, gee, it really wasn't all that hard.
But the truth is, it's getting harder all the time. White-collar unemployment is at its highest level since the early 1900s. Many North American companies, in an effort to cut costs, increase productivity, and promote their rising young stars, routinely discharge their bottom 5 to 10% producers every year at every level of management. While this prompts many white-collar workers to grit their teeth, gird their loins, and do fierce battle in the business community, others question the values those people are fighting for.
Seek the guidance of your Holy Spirit as we search the scriptures to find guidance for our daily lives here in our work situation. And then give us the power and the wisdom.
Reverend Graham Tucker ministers to those who work in Toronto's downtown core. These white-collar workers regularly spend their lunch hours in his tiny office chapel. They know several people in Biff Wilson's situation, and they pity those people for having put all their faith in a business career.
Now, because, just as Al said, because of reorganization of the company and a difference of opinion with the new president, he's been let go. And he's well looked after for at least a year because of the severance arrangement. But the bottom's dropped out of his life. The only thing that gives his life meaning has disappeared.
I think if something were to happen now that I was to lose that position I now have, that it would be very little concern at all. I know the Lord would look after me. I don't know just how, but it would be there.
I think that it's clear that there are going to be more and more people chasing fewer and fewer jobs. The competition is going to be fierce. And really, I think only a kind of elite are going to end up holding the jobs. And more people are going to just find that there is no work in the traditional sense available for them. And at that point, they're going to have to start rethinking. Lord, we just pray that you would go with each one of us to our place of work, and we'll say together, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Bye-bye. Okay, bye. See you next week.
While some people may be looking for an alternative set of values to live by, companies continue to conform to the bottom line. Faced with brutal competition, they now ask Eric Barton's firm, and many others just like it, to organize 50% more terminations, shutdowns, and layoffs each year. This trend looks like it's here to stay.
Yeah, I think there's going to be more people terminated in the future without any question. And the rationale for that is that people and companies and organizations are dealing in shorter time horizons. And just like people changing their careers much more during their working life, companies are expecting more from fewer resources from their manager. They're putting unbelievable pressure on them to produce profits. If a guy doesn't do the job, he's out. And I don't see how that's going to change. We think there's an era of the hard-nosed manager coming back, and hard-nosed managers fire people.
3 months into his campaign, Wilson was ready to vault back into the big time and prove Barton wrong.
The company is a U.S.-based multinational. They needed a new marketing man in Canada. And after meeting their Toronto people and taking their psychological tests, I was flown to New York to meet with the president. It was a crucial interview, and while I may have been a little nervous, I was extremely well prepared.
Mr. Saunders.
Thank you.
Saunders, this way, please.
Nice to meet you.
Biff is never going to get back there again. There's no way. But that doesn't mean other people couldn't. Biff can't. By the time Biff catches up, because it's going to take him a long time to catch up, okay, if he wanted to hit back into the Universal area, there's no way. He's blackballed, okay? I mean, he just doesn't have that kind of marketing expertise. By the time he catches up, he's a generation away, okay? Companies want 30 to 35-year-old guys that are just coming out of Western or out of Harvard's business school, and the marketing language and culture and knowledge that they have, okay? Biff will be 50 by the time he gets that.
I'd fully expected a welcome aboard phone call, but the rejection came in the mail. They didn't even bother to give me a reason. But I knew what it was. I was a little too old to accomplish what they had in mind. And for me, it felt like it was all over. I got pretty low after that.
How are you?
Good. Any messages? I thought about packing it in. Maybe buying into a little marina up north. But that wouldn't have kept me happy. I wanted to stay in business, so I faced facts. I lowered my sights. I accepted that there'd be a cut in salary, and I went after what I could get.
Mr. Klein, my name's D.R. Wilson. I'm researching the food business right now, and Frank Rice gave me your name.
Sure, what can I do for you?
Well, basically, I'm looking for a small to medium-sized firm which could use my expertise.
I know most of Barton's lines off by heart, but my favorite is use people.
Sure. Ray Morris. Good. Thank you.
Use people like you've never used people before, and don't be afraid or ashamed to do it. Sure, Eric understands the job market, and he helped me deal with my situation. But he also helped create it. Don't kid yourself. He makes it easy for companies to get rid of people.
If I couldn't relate to him effectively, he would use that to say I don't trust that guy because he's an agent of the company. He got me fired. As a matter of fact, they wouldn't have even fired me if Barton hadn't been around here. That's not true. That's not true. He can now see it in such a way that he knows that 100% of my activity is to help him get out of the mess he's in. That's a lot better than being there alone on the street. Ever walk the streets? I walk the streets looking at the people, wondering how many of them are looking for jobs. Okay, what are they really like when they take their clothes off? Okay? They're hurt puppies. Okay? And our people here solve their problems. I've got letters, testimonials, they're all over the place here of what it was like that when people went through. Got one recently, president of a company, and he said, I couldn't have made it without you. Okay, do you think he's kidding? There's no way. Now, that's what turns our people on.
Yeah, well, I was with Universal Foods, and that was a big corporation, too, and, you know, there's always big changes, and, The only people who can afford to care about a company's long-term future anymore are the ones who own controlling interest. A manager can't afford to care. He can't be loyal. He knows he could be gone tomorrow. So sure, I've learned to distance myself emotionally. I'm going to be looking after my interests, and only my interests, from now on.
Please, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Stubbs, I'm researching the Morris organization, and Frank Rice told me that you were the man to talk to.
To learn exactly what the company was looking for, Wilson talked to their suppliers, their buyers, and a number of their employees.
Well, Mr. Stubbs, you've been really helpful. Can I ask you one last question? What's Morris really like?
The company president had complete faith in only one of his subordinates, Crossan, the vice president of finance. Wilson wanted to meet that man.
You know, it's really rough being out of work for 3 or 4 months. Trying to get a fix on Bill Crossan, do you know him?
Bill Crossan? Why don't you tell me? I play squash with him every Tuesday.
Ah, okay. Give me an introduction.
No problem. Love to do it.
Oh, I'm Bill Crossan.
Bill, nice to meet you.
Nice
Biff
to meet
Wilson.
you.
Can I get you gentlemen anything from the bar?
Bill?
Yes, a little glass of white wine would be very nice, thank you.
I'll have the same.
Wilson polished his style. He made people like him. He made them respect his skills. And he let them know he could help them with their problem, after he got them to tell him exactly what it was.
Our owner, Ray, is very much a hands-on operator. Now, I've been able to keep his fingers out of the financial side of the business a bit, and Brian's been pretty good about keeping him out of operating. But we've never had a marketing man who could really take hold of that end and run it. We've got to get somebody in that area to really take hold and do some of the exciting things that are possible.
That's exactly the opportunity I've been looking for.
Well, you'll be interested to know then that we have a very quiet search going on right now. Herm Smith has a contract to find us a new marketing vice president. And after our conversations today, I think that you should contact him.
Wilson eventually discovered that companies were selfish. that people in the position to hire him didn't care what he wanted, how he felt, or who he was. They only wanted to know if he could help them make a profit. Once Wilson found a market where he could confidently present himself in that light, things began to fall into place.
Excuse me.
Very soon. One moment, please, sir. Yes, sir.
Doug Wilson to see Herm Smith.
Fine, Mr. Wilson. Would you have a seat? I'll let him know you're here.
Thank you.
Bill Crossan liked Wilson and felt that his many years' experience with a large company could benefit a smaller company like Morris Foods. But Crossan wanted to make sure, so he had executive recruiter Herm Smith give Wilson the once-over lightly.
Mr. Wilson?
Ah,
Doug?
Mr. Smith.
Hi, how are you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Come on down.
Thank you.
What do you know about the company at this stage of the game?
Well, they're small. They're privately owned. Basically, the three guys do most of the work. Rogers, Crossan, and Morris. They have sales of about $20 million a year. They got a good reputation in the trade. They import a high-quality line of chocolates, cheeses, biscuits. That's a plus these days when it's getting more difficult to foist dreck on the public.
That's right. And the upscale market's there.
It seems to me, though, that their number one problem is the U.S. market. What do you think?
You may be right. You may be right, but I guess I shouldn't volunteer. What would you do about it?
Well, I think that's where I can come in, because in my previous position, I spent a lot of time in the States, and I still got a lot of good contacts down there. I got agency people, promotion houses, package design houses, and after we've done our feasibility study, I'm going to use those contacts.
What do you think should be coming your way?
I can see myself as a senior officer of the company with a solid equity position. I'm also looking for a two-way commitment and a piece of the action.
Yep. All things going right, you have a right to expect it. Not initially. It takes time, but sure it can happen.
Hello, Biff. Nice to see you again.
Oh, good to see you.
Come on in. I think we're all ready for you in here.
Good.
Biff, we talked at lunch about Ray can be kind of formal, and it's a little intimidating. Just be natural, be yourself, and everything I'm sure will go fine. And let me wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Okay? Right in here, please. Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Doug Wilson. Doug, our president, Ray Morris, our vice president of operations, Brian Rogers.
How do you do, sir?
Why don't you sit down, Mr. Wilson? Bill's told me some things about you. He's very impressed. I've read your resume and various documents. I'd like to hear from you now about the reasons you think you could join our company and be beneficial to us.
Well, as you know, I'm very interested in your company.
Most executives tend to isolate themselves after they're fired. They get angry. They bargain. They get depressed. It may be years before they finally accept a company's judgment of them. But long before that happens, most of them march back into the marketplace and do whatever's necessary to regain what they've lost. It's estimated that 80% of those who receive relocation counseling find another job 4 to 6 months down the line. Often their new employer doesn't know they've been fired. Neither their resumes nor their demeanor are likely to let it show. And there's an added bonus later on. Whenever they need help firing somebody, they know they can always bank on the services of the man who helped fire them.
Sure, it's being a missionary in the business world. I'm not embarrassed by that at all. Of course I am. And that's why we're successful, too. And that's why we're the biggest. Because there was a need, and we're believable. And when we talk to people about the work we do, we're sincere. And we're human. Okay? And it's catching.
The design's coming from the agency on the new packaging.
I'd like to take a look at them.
It's really great. They've done a great job. That's Janine over there. Janine works for Bill.
Hello. Hi, Janine.
Mary's not in yet. She works for Brian.
Is she usually late?
No, not really. Just today.
Oh, hi, Ray.
Oh, hi, Ted.
Ted?
Ted doesn't know it, but you're his replacement.